think I underestimated 2024 Tokusatsu just a little bit.
You underestimate my power!
You see, like, Blazar is on its way out, so is King Oger, and while I like the Boom Boonger designs, I also think it's going to be kind of a return to form for Super Sentai, like a basic Super Sentai, until we can get real crazy with the 50th anniversary. And Gotchard is there. Gotchard is there, and if you like Gotchard, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But it's there, and it's entering its second act, so we'll see how that goes. I think the thing I was most excited for going into 2024 was the, like, Tokusatsu adjacent anime. There's 3 big ones coming out, one of which has already started, but we'll talk about that more later in a different video. But the thing I have come to realize that I was really overlooking was Garo. Garo Heir to Steel Armor started airing this week, and I'm gonna be completely honest, I wasn't going to watch it. You see, my experience with the Garo-verse is I've basically watched half of the first season and then all of Versus Road. And Versus Road is an incredible show that deserves a sequel, but that aired in 2020 and it's not really what you would call like the basics of Garo. It's definitely an outlier series compared to the rest of Garo, which isn't to say I don't like the rest of Garo. Garo is a very mature style of tokusatsu, a midnight tokusatsu, if you will. It's very horror-centric and kind of adult. The first episode of Garo just has a naked woman in it to show you that, like, hey, this isn't Kamen Rider or Super Sentai or Ultraman or even Ultra 7X. And the franchise regularly deals with heavier topics like that. So if you want something a little more adult than your regular superhero time, Garo would be the one to watch. While not being the biggest horror guy, I am straight up a scaredy cat. I get scared super easy. The biggest thing that turned me off to Garo Heir of Steel Armor was that it is a sequel series to 2 other series in the Garo universe, or more appropriately, the Ryuuga-verse, which refers to Dogai Ryuga, the main character of these 3 installments of the Garo-verse. The One Who Shines in the Darkness is the first season starring Dogai, which came out 10 years ago, and so this series serves as kind of a 10-year anniversary to that. So simply put, I was like, man, I don't really have a lot of time to go back and watch all that, so this Garo just kind of off the radar for me. And then I saw a tweet that said that episode 1 was up on YouTube with official English subs. And if I feel like I have to support anything in the tokusatsu sphere, it's official English subs, because we don't get them that often. They're becoming more and more prevalent with things that are uploaded to YouTube or indie tokusatsu, but for some reason, the biggest company in the space just doesn't want us to have them. But I digress. So anytime a company decides to put up English subs, I have to support it. So I threw on Heir to Steel Armor just to support this episode of Garo. Not really knowing what I was in for, but quickly realizing that I think I just watched the best first episode of Tokusatsu that I had ever seen. The episode starts out with Zaruba giving a little bit of exposition. If you don't know, Zaruba is like the Garo's Pokédex for horrors. It tells them what's going on, directs them places, also gives them missions sometimes. It's just kind of a talking ring that's really cool and a sick piece of merch. But in that explanation, there was a word that I didn't really recognize, and that was Hajime. A quick search on the Garo wiki says that Hajime refers to mass-produced Makai armors that specialize in longsword combat and are utilized by untitled Makai knights. So they're used to fight horrors, but they aren't Garo, if that makes sense. A quick note here, I've seen some people bring up on Twitter that these sub-translations seem to be machine translated, which YouTube will do automatically if you need it to. One of the examples is here. It says, "It is a Makai knight who hunts horrors, which are magical horror that eat humans." That and a few other snafus are persistent throughout the episode, but it's nothing that makes it unwatchable. So if anything, I hope they go in and clean them up for future episodes, but I just wanted to point that out. So Zaruba does this thing like he does in most Garo intros, and then we go into this scene where it's a businessman walking home from work and is obviously being stalked by something. And after pausing the episode and turning on the lights in my house, we get a look of what that thing is, and it's basically the girl from The Grudge. Like, whatever I think about when I think of Japanese horror, this is what it is right here. This is the perfect picture of what I think a ghost in Japanese horror would be. But she's using all the screens in the area to stalk this man because it's 2024 and there's screens everywhere, social commentary, I get it. And right before she absolutely rips his face off, the main character, Ryuga Dogai, shows up, and I'm sorry, can I say something and you guys won't get mad at me? I wasn't familiar with this drip. I wasn't familiar with your style, Ryuga. Like, damn. So this fine-ass man just shows up and then proceeds to absolutely outclass this ghost girl. Like, he doesn't even need the Garo armor right here. He's just dodging and pushing him off like he's playing with her at this point. And besides like making me feel things, this is also just a really badass fight scene. She notices she's outclassed. She tries to run back into the screen to like escape him, and he beats her to the screen and destroys the gate that she was going to use. And that could have been it. I would have been happy. I would have been like, okay, I understand who this character is. I understand that he hunts horrors. But then Japanese horror girl decides to level up and start phase 2 of the battle like she's a Kingdom Hearts boss, and turns into one of the sickest kaijin suits I've seen this season. Like, this would have been cool on its own.
Focus, Conan.
But then she pulls off the horns and turns it into her weapons that she's gonna use in this fight. Like, we love functionality in our Tokusatsu suits. And even now, she thinks like, I got this, and he's outclassing her a little bit. But then, Dogai decides, I'm done playing around, and pulls out the Golden Knight Garo armor. Like, look at the panic on her face. She knows she's fucked. I mean, like, one hit KO fucked. And we get one of the most beautiful shots in the whole episode right here that just makes me realize why I love Tokusatsu again. This whole shot, the suit, the CG effects blending together so perfectly. It's like, man, this is what this genre is about.
Oh, that's that good shit!
And then I look down at the time and we're only 7 minutes and 19 seconds into the episode. We're only a third of the way through. If it ended right here, I would have been like, damn, banger first episode, gonna watch the next one. But no, right after this we meet Kiori, who comes to Ryuga with a mission and takes him to this place called Kree City, where the rest of the episode takes place. And this might just be a me thing, but this is the establishing shot of Kree City, and you can see it's like almost dusk time, like the sun's going down, and it looks very nice. Almost like, it looks like Gallifrey, if I'm being honest. It looks like Gallifrey from Doctor Who. But then we go to the shots right after that, and you can kind of see, yeah, it's like golden hour and the sun goes down. And then later in the episode, it's just nighttime, and I didn't think daytime, nighttime system would be something I was excited about since, you know, like Pokemon Gold and Silver. But here we are in 2024, and me being excited about the sun rising and setting in real life Tokusatsu. Anyways, remember when I was saying Garo is more mature in its themes and everything? Some guy in this, the main antagonist of this episode, if you want to call him, literally just beats the shit out of his employer. It's in fact very graphic, so I don't even know if I can show all of it without being fully demonetized. But if blood in Tokusatsu is something you're like always looking for more of, then here you go, my emo millennial brethren. He's obviously possessed by a horror while doing this, and if you haven't seen Garo before, horrors are just like ghosts, apparitions. They're the main bad guys of the week in this franchise. We go back to Ryuga and Kiori, and they're basically setting up the first premise of the season, that the gate that all the horrors come from is about to be reopened. Right then, Zaruba does his job and says, hey, there's a horror near, and Ryuga runs off to find our local murderer. And this is probably what puts the show over the edge for me, because the local murderer turns into what is probably one of my favorite looking Toku monsters I've ever seen. Like, this is someone's World of Warcraft character brought into real life, and that includes everything with it. Like, the way he moves, the way he breathes, the way he swings his hammer, it all just feels so coherent and, like, not human that I would believe this was something not of this world, if that makes sense. And it doesn't need a bunch of CGI or anything. It's just this dope, old-school Tokusatsu fight. This is what I was waiting for in Garo versus Road, but then I got this, like, half an episode CGI fight fest, and I'm really glad they did away with that style and went back to this. Not to say there's no CGI, because this is when Kiori jumps in as a Makai priestess and starts using magic, and there's something I just love about magic in Tokusatsu. Like, when magic is mixed with Tokusatsu, like when it's both elements, it does something to my soul. So she jumps into this fight just looking like a badass, not even caring, like, hey, this is just a Tuesday night, no big deal. And then she pulls this move where she slides on the ground on her knees. My knees hurt just watching it. Like, look at it in slow motion. Where are your knee pads? How are you not scraped up from this? If I did this, I would instantly need like 10 Elmo and Tango band-aids. I was also just afraid that Koyori would be this kind of damsel in distress type character. Like I said before, I watched half of the first season of Garo, and the main girl in that show is literally just that most of the time. So I didn't want her to fall in the same thing, but her getting her own fight in this and like really holding her own made me so happy. So now I'm instantly on board with these two main characters we have before being introduced to the third main character, who Ryuga obviously doesn't know.
Hagane no yoroi.
There's that word again, Hagane. Now I understand why it's such a big deal at the beginning of the episode. This dude makes short work of my favorite monster boy before revealing himself to be Soma Shirahane. Goodbye, my favorite monster boy. He basically tells Ryuga to fuck off, this is his city, like some sick bad boy, and then walks away. But that's the end of the episode, and honestly, I'm kinda hooked. We've got a couple mysteries in play with the Gate of Destruction and who Soma is, and the action is top notch. Probably the best action I've seen in the last 6 months of Toku. Like, check this off for the 2025 Toku Awards. I already know this series is gonna win for best fight scene. And honestly, I mean what I say in the title. I think this is the best first episode of Tokusatsu that I've ever seen. Some of you might say that's hyperbole, but I went from this show not even being on my radar to now wanting to go back and watch every season that Ryuga is in. I love a main character that already knows all his stuff. Like, Geats was super cool to see, but this is like if I saw Geats and could go back and watch how Ace became Ace before the show even started. And I think to be able to make me feel that way about a character that I had no previous knowledge or connection to is a really big task. So Garo, Heir to Steel Armor Episode 1, 5 stars from me. I will be following it along. Unfortunately, I can't show it over on Twitch for Superhero Saturday because Garo is known for, you know, blood and boobs and stuff, and Twitch is not known for blood and boobs and stuff most of the time, so I'm going to have to follow it along on my own, but you guys can talk to me about it in the Discord or down in the comments. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time.